Alright guys, welcome back. I have been super excited to go over the cruise control setup for these, specifically the ALH. The BEW and the BHW should be very similar, but the BRM and newer gets a lot more complicated with the CAN bus inputs and everything. But I really love the simplicity of having push button cruise control on these older engines and pretty much being able to fit them into everything. So, I mean, the first thing to go over is the speed sensor, and unfortunately, that is the hardest part. Once that's figured out, it is pretty much a piece of cake after that. So like on the Toyota, it had a um, speed cable going to the old speedometer, and that I was able to find a converter to convert that to a 3-wire Hall effect sensor, which is the same thing. You're going to want that for everything. A 3-wire sensor, power, ground, and the sense wire is the only thing that the ALH ECU is concerned about. And so on like this Dakota, that was going to be a little bit of an issue because it gets its speed sensor from the rear axle, which is actually a 2-wire sensor. I'm not sure if I could have made that work or not. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot. I only have the Dakota now and the Toyota for experience. And since this thing is kind of a Frankenstein build anyway, it is using a 95 Dodge 1500 T-case, which already came with a sensor in it, just like my Jeep does. And so that was easy to plug into. It wasn't even being used. I haven't set up cruise on my Jeep yet to be able to verify if I can tie in the same signal going to the speedometer as the VW ECU without affecting the speedometer signal. So we'll have to see there. But your big thing is, long story short, you need a 3-wire sensor and it needs to put in some kind of a speed signal. So you can almost use like a crank sensor, and I know guys have done that. It's a little tricky running off the engine though, because just the changes are, I guess, I don't know if it's more abrupt or what, but I've just had, from reading about people's experiences, they've had some issues trying to run off of like a crank sensor. So if you can get a vehicle speed sensor to work, that is definitely your best bet. So I'll crawl under here and show you what this thing looks like. And I actually ordered a pigtail to get this thing working, and it ended up being for a newer 3-wire plug. So I actually just have some terminal ends heat shrinked onto there for now, just to get the signal going in. But that's, like I say, most of these are going to be power and ground on either side, and then sense in the middle. And like I say, that's really all there is to it. So then, to go over the necessary wiring, and I guess also to start with, if you're going to even think about doing this, you've got to have VCDS, because it is critical to be able to tell what's going on and what the ECU is seeing and what it isn't seeing. And then you've got, so this is David Shoemaker's pinout here from TDI, the TDI swap group, and it is definitely a lifesaver doing any kind of wiring on these guys. But the blue lines here are all the cruise critical functions. Up here at the top is the speed sensor. Again, that's just one input, just the sense. So then that power and that ground are separate, that I have on keyed on power there for it. And then the cruise actually has two on wires, 14 and 46. I usually just tie those two together, so they both come on at the same time. And then you've got your cruise set and your cruise coast, or I guess set. It's set and coast, and then resume and accelerate. And then probably your last two hard ones to set up are the brake wires. VW is super confusing about this. They've got two brake inputs, one normally open and one normally closed. So you can do one of two things here. You can take the factory brake pedal button, but it's actually got this weird, I don't know, they disconnect it whenever you unhook the switch. I don't know what their idea was there, but when this switch is not in its factory hookup, the push button goes completely limp, doesn't do anything. It's worthless. So you got to take this thing apart, put a screw through the center, and that will make it work so that it functions how it's supposed to. And then you basically wire it up how it is. If you've got the schematics for the wiring, you're going to have two powers coming in and two going out, but one is on and one is off, and when you push on the brake, they flip-flop. The other option, though, is David Shoemaker's brother, I believe it's Damon. It has his own electronics sort of company, Shoemaker Electronics. You can kind of see it there if it'll focus. But he made these pretty cool little chips here, and basically what it does is it makes it to where you get both functions of the factory switch out of one wire. So it's pretty easy to set up. It's got a power and a ground, and then the two brake wires. But when the one brake wire loses power, this sends power to the other one. Sorry, I got that backwards. It normally sends power to one, but when the other one receives power, it turns the opposite one off. Like I say, I don't know why they had to do it like that, but thankfully we have cool stuff like this. So you hook up one wire to the factory brake pedal on whatever your swap vehicle is, the Dakota here, and whenever that receives power, so it'd be, I think it's the black one. When the black one receives power, this chip tells the yellow one that already had power to turn off. So it's pretty sweet. I definitely recommend that. I'll have a link there either to talk to David or his brother. I don't know that they have an actual website or anything, but whatever they have, I'll get a link for it there. And once you have that stuff set up, you can go ahead and go into VCDS and look at what you're seeing. So once you've got that, you're going to need, basically, it depends on how you want to do it. I kind of cheat on this, but normally you'd probably want one on-off switch to turn the power on to the cruise control. Then you'd have two push buttons, one for set and one for resume. I could wire those into the factory buttons here. I did find the wires out there, but I'm not even sure I'm going to keep this steering wheel, so I didn't mess with that yet. I also had some holes that the previous owner was nice enough to put in the dash for me to not need. So I filled those with these push buttons here, but I actually only have one of them wired up, so I only have the set wire here. So basically I only have the option of setting and coasting. I'm using this button for the glow plugs, and this is for the light bar in front. But anyway, so you technically only need one button to have functioning cruise, which is pretty sweet. I have the on-off just wired straight to the key, So when the key turns on, the cruise control's on. The brake turns it off, and that's all there is to it. I did forget though, you're gonna need to wire the clutch wire, and if you have a clutch, you can wire it to a separate clutch switch so that it's usually connected to 12 volts, and when you push the clutch in, it turns off. I usually cheat on that one as well and just wire it to 12 volts all the time. That's what I did on the Toyota. So I don't ever push the clutch in without stepping on the brake, so it's not really an issue. Once the cruise is on, if I'm stopping it, I'm using the brake, so I don't really call it a big deal. And so I guess I'm just okay with that. Obviously it's somewhat of a safety risk there, but we'll go ahead and turn the key on here. So that's going to turn everything on, and I'll go through what you guys need to see on here to be happy. So you're going to let it pop up here, go to measuring blocks, go to, oh, I passed it to 6. That's going to show you everything here. So first off, your brake pedal monitoring. You've got 2 of these for the brake and 1 for the clutch. And so again, I have this guy wired in underneath, so it's making both of the brake pedals inputs happy. One of them's off, one of them's on. And then the clutch is also happy. It is just wired straight to 12 volts. So you'll be able to see when I push on the brake pedal here, we'll get both of the brake lights are on, the second 2, and when I release, they both go off. Again, that switch, or the circuit chip there, is doing both of them at the same time, and it's just wired to the regular wire that goes out to your brake lights. That's all you got to do if you go ahead and use that. Otherwise, you'd just wire in your clutch switch and it would do the same thing. It'd normally be pressed in and it would pop out, and you get both of those lit up. And again, if you had the clutch pedal wired, when you push the clutch in, that first 0 would go to a 1. But for the cruise to be working, you need all 3 of them at 0. And then once we move over here, the only 2 that you want on are the last 2 that the cruise control switch is on and the cruise control or system is on and inactive. And then you can verify your push buttons there, I guess, and you will see, I think you'll see there, yeah, that one also goes to a 1. The brake pedal is operated, and back to a 0. And then I'll go ahead and push my set cruise here, and there that goes to a 1. So you're just given those 12 volts. Everything's 12 volts. That's what I love about these ALH setups. There's nothing complicated. Simple 12 volts on and off. And if you wanted to wire in the resume, you'd take that wire, which is 45, wire that to another push button or to a cruise control switch, and then whenever you push that, you could see that it's working. But when the cruise is happy, it says 1.0. I think it'll say like 17 if it's missing something or it's not happy. But that is about it. So we'll go ahead and take this thing out on the road in the morning and show you guys how it works. So here we're just cruising to work in the morning, and I was going to also mention, depending on how you do your dash, obviously I've been doing a lot of these custom dashes, and the cool part about that is if you don't need your speedometer, the factory one, then it won't really affect you at all to use this, put the input to the Volkswagen, because you can get an OBD display like this and have your mile per hour right there, off of the speed sensor you used for the Volkswagen for the cruise control. So that's pretty slick that way. Again, I haven't been able to test tying the VW ECU to your swap vehicle's cruise control or the swap vehicle's speedometer and see if that's going to affect anything or not. But either way, we're cruising along here about 70, and if I go ahead and push my cruise control set button, got it pushed, and I am no longer touching the gas, and we're cruising right along. And being that it's computer controlled cruise, it is very precise, just like your newer vehicles. So much nicer than like a vacuum system. I'm just cruising on flatland here, but you can see how much it fluctuates. It's very little. Climbing hills and stuff, it'll put the pedal to the floor for you, but then it'll let off without, I don't think I've seen over a 2 mile per hour raise cresting a hill or going down a steep grade. It backs it off nicely for you. So definitely pretty excited to have the cruise control going, because here in Wyoming there's a lot of really straight roads, so cruise control is definitely a plus. But yeah, we're cruising along now, and tap the brake here, turbo bark still, but we're back to driving ourselves. And we'll set the cruise, well, speed up just a little. And set the cruise again. And there it is. Holding nice and steady. Go through some turns here and go across the river, and still almost no change in your speed, as I was saying. So yeah, pretty pleased with this, and you guys can definitely comment if you need any more assistance with this. I'm glad to help out. It's a pretty sweet feature you get with this swap. So definitely excited to have it going. Thanks for watching.